let's do what we do best. Do a little bit of projecting. Where do you think? First off, where do you think Memphis is going to land?
All right.
In the rankings,
I think this is pretty clear to me.
Yeah,
Tulane and UTSA, they're number 1 and number 2 in whatever order you want to do. I think Tulane should be 1 personally because UTSA lost Sakari Franklin. That was one of their main receivers. Their run game, since Sincere McCormick, has fallen off a little bit. Their O-line, they have a bunch of guys that got drafted the past couple of years. So I think UTSA may be projected the highest, but I don't expect them to end the highest. But I'd put Tulane, UTSA, all on their own. Then I think there's a group of SMU and Memphis where you're going to say, okay, who's 3, who's 4?
Yeah.
Just if I'm projecting, I think that a lot of the media members that have covered this team the past 2 years are going to put them at 4.
Yeah.
Just because they've seen 6-6, 3-5 in conference, and they haven't lived up to expectations when expectations have largely been placed on them. So I would expect them to be 4. But I don't see, if they fall below that, I think that's a little insane considering the rest of the conference is just kind of in flux. You have so many new coaches. You have Biff Poggi at Charlotte. You have Trent Dilfer at UAB. You just keep going down the list. There's so much.
Temple and Navy over the last couple of years have not been very relevant.
And Navy has a new coach. Right. It was their DC, which is strange to me. You fire the one guy and then bring in just the DC to replace him who was on the whatever. But you have a lot of influx. You have a lot of teams and programs in flux for outside of the top 4. So I would imagine they'll get in the top 4, probably at 4 is my projection.
Yeah, I think they'll land at 4 too. Like we typically, especially since the heights that Memphis football reached, we've seen them be ranked a little bit lower. And most years we've said that's probably a little bit too low. Now it's turned out to be somewhat accurate. But we talked about this on your show last week, just talking about there's been so many games in the Ryan Silverfield era that if something happens, and we know this, the margin of error is so small. If something happens differently, if a penalty is not called,
there on the precipice, and like the GAC leads the past 2 years, it's like, man. And then digging yourself a hole against the best team in conference in Tulane last year, and then coming back the entire second half.
Yeah,
it's just like from a talent perspective, they're right there on the precipice. And sometimes when they perform, they're right there on the precipice of winning big games and competing at a high level and winning 8 or 9 games.
Yeah.
They just win 6. They've won 6 the past 2 years. It's frustrating because so many different things could have shifted and they would have been 9-game winners the past 2 years.
Absolutely. So I think 4 is where they'll land, but I think 3 would be more where personally I would probably place them at 3.
So what else? I mean, in conference, you're looking at, okay, we mentioned UTSA and Tulane at the top. UAB and Charlotte are dealing with coaching switches. East Carolina is kind of, they're moving out of the Holt Nailers era, so they're going to have to find a new quarterback pretty quickly. Navy's going to be Navy. They're going to run a triple option, and they may be good, they may not. Like, we'll see. Rice has JT Daniels, so that could be interesting.
Oh, yeah, I forgot he went there.
SMU is going to Alex Padilla transfer from Iowa. Rhett Lashley did not impress me year 1 as a head coach.
Nope.
Like this conference is South Florida's no good. Temple's no good. Tulsa's no good. They just Philip Montgomery's no longer there. Like this conference, it should be simple to navigate. It should be.
Yeah, as far as a top 3 finish, that should be the standard.
Yeah, that should be
that should be the
base
minimum.
Yeah, benchmark.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just not impressive.
Yeah,
and even the 2 teams at the top in UTSA and Tulane, I think, have questions. I mean, Tulane unquestionably lost their best player. I know Michael Pratt's coming back. I know a lot of people are high on him, but Tajay Spears was what made that team go last year.
He was the AAC. He was the offensive player of the year.
Yeah, he was incredible. Yeah. Like Tajay Spears could not be stopped. There wasn't a game where he really played bad.
They still got one of the Watts, right? Or are they gone?
I think they have one.
They have one still. Deuce or Fat, whichever one.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I can't tell you.
So yeah, I think there are question marks even at the top of this conference, which really makes it at the end of the day wide open.
And I've heard.
And what does that
Kenny
go to?
was telling me about TJ on Tigers on Tap, talking about UTSA being picked to be the peak of this conference and winning 8 games. I could see that. UTSA. I love Frank Harris. And he got a big NIL bag to come back for another year, and not get in the transfer portal and go elsewhere. And I still think they have some decent receivers on the outside. They have a Cephas. I forget his first name, but Cephas. Joshua Cephas is out there. But they lost to Kari. That dude caught for 1,600 yards last year.
Right.
And double-digit touchdowns. And Sincere McCormick ain't walking through that door. Spencer Buford ain't walking through that door. So that run game's going to be at least a step down. So I have questions about UTSA ultimately being as good as they're going to be projected.
So here's my thing. When it comes to winning a conference, especially one at the top that I think has a lot of parity, I think at the end of the day, you can circle quarterback play, and that's probably where the best ends up. And really, you got Frank Harris, Seth Hennigan, Michael Pratt.
Yeah.
That's the 3 best quarterbacks.
JT Daniels, but JT Daniels probably not going to have worth a damn defense or worth a damn weapon.
And he's never really proven anything anyway. Talent-wise.
At this level, it'll probably be solid. You would imagine.
You would imagine. But I think that's probably what this conference boils down to at the end of the day. Which one of those 3 quarterbacks has the best season? If Michael Pratt does what he did last year again, Tulane's got a really good shot. If Frank Harris continues to elevate this team in a slightly more difficult conference than they were in last year, they got a good chance to do it. If Seth Hennigan's weapons step up and the offensive line steps up and he takes his game to the next level, Memphis has a good chance of doing it. Like, that's what I think when there's such little margin for error between teams at the top. I think more often than not, it's going to come down to which quarterback has the best season.
And I'm serious when I say this, and I know some fans may roll their eyes, but fans that have been paying attention to the transfer portal and all the additions on the defensive side of the ball for this Memphis team will understand what I'm saying. This should be, without question, a top 3 defense in this conference. Should be.
Yeah.
The depth, I mean, what they've added on the defensive line, their secondary, Simeon Blair.
They're good all 3 levels.
Chandler Martin, I'd expect to be really good at linebacker.
Jeff Canton coming back.
Jeff Canton, Jalen Allen, Cormante Hamilton. Like, they've got experience. They have good transfer portal additions from Power 5s, guys that played a lot. Like Simeon Blair was a damn captain at Arkansas before he left. This should be a top 3 defense in the AAC.
Yeah, all caps should be.
Should be. But we'll see what happens when we get into season. Once we get into game 1, we'll sort of see what we need to see. And I for the most part, I think Matt Barnes has been a pretty good coordinator.
Yeah.
In his 1 year.
Yeah.
So it's sort of 5-6 games where they were trying to find their footing, never really had the depth on the defensive line that they will have this year, by the way. Last 6 games into the bowl season, they looked not lights out, but pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So with the amount of talent, influx of talent, with Matt Barnes leading it, I expect this defense to be good. Offenses, where I have questions. We've talked about that.
We've talked about that. Yeah.